Welcome to the Brady Marks podcast with your host Brady Yashia from Brady Marks Buyers Advisory. Enjoy discussions with a variety of guests and pioneers from diverse backgrounds, each sharing their unique perspectives on property, business, industry and more.
On today's episode, we're joined by Jordan York, founder of Buy Invite Finance and a true expert in specialty lending. With over a decade of experience across Australia's top financial institutions, Jordan created Buy Invite to fill a gap in the market, helping high-achieving clients with complex needs and access to lending solutions tailored to their goals. Known for her sharp financial insights, she's here to break down the big topics and help you navigate finance with clarity and confidence. Welcome, Jordan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here today. So you started in the finance world at a very young age. What was it that drew you into the finance arena so young?
Oh, it's definitely my parents. So, it was almost predetermined that I was going to go into finance. Both of my parents were actually bank tellers when they had me. So on my birth certificate, it's basically finance. So growing up with both of my parents being involved in the industry, albeit not in lending, so they were in different fields, it just felt like a natural fit for me to go into that. I was good with numbers. I really wanted to help people, and it just worked out really well.
So it's in your DNA.
I'd like to think so. But then I'd also like to think it's me as well, but, not going to knock that.
Yes. So you have an accounting background.
Yes.
How do you put those skills into use when helping your clients with tailored financial solutions?
I think it's really important with anything to do with lending that you understand financials and tax returns. So the types of clients that we deal with, they're very complex. So think lots of family trusts, unit trusts, companies, bucket companies, anything and everything that the accountant can do to try and minimize tax. So having an accounting background is super helpful because we can unwrap what they're doing to minimize tax to make sure that you can maximize your borrowing capacity. Because lots of banks will not understand to the extent that an accountant does. So when they're looking at it, they're not knowing that you can add certain things back, or they're treating different loans between entities differently. So it's really helpful with the types of clients that we work with.
Yeah, it's a bonus for your clients.
It's definitely good. We definitely don't go into giving tax advice. That's definitely with the accountant, but it makes it a lot easier if we're having the conversation with the accountant on, what can we do versus the client getting involved and trying to speak bank and lending and accounting, and they're like, what is going on? So we try and bridge that gap.
Yeah, that's great. So the name Buy Invite, for your the name of your company, I should say, Buy Invite.
Yes.
Sounds intentional.
Yes.
Can you share where the name came from?
Yeah, look, it took a lot of brainstorming. So ultimately the reason the business was born was that I wanted to work with the types of clients that I was already working with. So we were dealing with high net worth medical professionals, family offices, business owners, lots of wealthy people in Sydney, and they were referring families and friends. And ultimately, everyone that I was dealing with had been invited to work with me. So when we were looking on available business names and everything for finance is taken, we went a completely different route and just wanted to kind of seclude ourselves a little bit and be a little bit cheeky. So the types of clients that we deal with have been invited. So that's how it was born.
So what was the moment that led you to say, yep, I'm going to start my own company?
I think it was a lot longer of a journey than just one single moment. I had always been told throughout my career that I worked as if it was my business because I just always felt really committed to my clients and what I was doing. If I'm not giving 110%, I may as well not, you know what I mean? So there'd been multiple times throughout my career where people mentioned that, potentially that should be something you looked into. And I was always like, no, way too young, not experienced enough, not a business owner, don't have this, don't have that, and just came up with every excuse in the book, basically because I was nervous and scared. And then when I had my son, I really feel like that gave me the confidence boost to back myself a bit more. If you can survive a baby, you can survive anything. So then when I went back to work and there was a lot of changes at the company I was at while I was on maternity leave. And when I came back, it just wasn't the same. It felt really different with clients. So I investigated whether I go out on my own or if I join a different firm in a different capacity. And nowhere that I looked was somewhere that I felt was right. Either it was not the right client experience, or the culture within the business wasn't right. They were all fantastic, phenomenal businesses, but I just was like, I really want to find the right place for me forever, I guess.
Yeah.
And when I couldn't find it, I was like, well, I guess gonna have to build it. So that was kind of the turning point for me.
It's always hard to make that initial decision, but once you make the decision, it's like, oh, wow, it wasn't that hard. Not that I'm going to say it's an easy road,
Yes.
but the hardest part, I think, is making the decision.
Yeah, definitely jumping was the hardest part. As soon as the decision was made, the path has been quite clear. I mean, there's still definitely days where I'm like, oh, it would be nice just to work for someone else and not have to be the one that's doing all these extra things or dealing with issues or anything like that. But, ultimately it was, once I'd made the decision, as you said, it was just all steam ahead, really.
Yeah. It's very common to have those thoughts on some days when things are challenging. What do you think it is that gets you over and back into that, okay, we're moving forward? What helps you make the decisions?
I work with really amazing people. I'm really lucky that not only the clients that I deal with are fabulous and most of them have become friends, the team that I've built around me are amazing. So if there's ever a day where I'm feeling a little unsure or potentially just a little bit, down on myself, like they build me back up, and we do the same for each other. So it's really nice to have that support network around me.
And that's a credit to you because you've built this team.
Oh, I'd like to think so, but each individual we've brought in really is a character. They're definitely interesting, but they're ultimately here for the right reason, and we're all just client obsessed, and we have amazing clients. So, it makes it very easy to get back on board if something happens, because ultimately you've always made the right decision because you've done what's best for someone else.
Exactly. So a lot of people find finance very confusing and daunting at times. What's your advice to them how to actually navigate the world of trying to get themselves into a position of thinking about getting finance?
Look, I mean, the term finance itself is so broad. I mean, when someone says finance, it could mean their finances, it could be their financials, it could be lending, it could be banking. There's just so many different things. I think that's why it gets overwhelming for people, because it's not language that you use every day. So they can't pinpoint exactly what it is that they're after. For example, someone could go, I want to buy a house, and then it's lending that they need. But they could also go, well, I need tax advice for my finances for my business, and then it's your accountant that you speak to. And because there's multiple different specialists and each one does different things, you're like, people can get so overwhelmed. And then you turn on a current affair and there's always something about rates or the economy and inflation and the banks doing things, and it can be massively overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming.
It's super intense.
And a lot of people's family all know better. They have an opinion.
Oh, everyone always has an opinion, whether it's right or wrong or informed or not. Makes our job very interesting. I think the best advice for anyone that has anything to do with finances is to speak to a trusted advisor. So I think having so much access available online to be able to do your own research, but ultimately having a team behind you is what's going to make all the difference. So on the lending front, hopefully it would be us or a broker or a lender. On the accounting side of things, you'd obviously have your accountant or your bookkeeper. And then the gap that I think a lot of people have missing is their financial planner. And that's really someone that looks at your overall position, what you're looking at achieving for supposedly the rest of your life almost. They're definitely talking about retirement and ongoing.
Yes.
And they kind of put a life financial game plan in place that everyone then works towards. So I think the team of advisors is the biggest gate-kept secret. I mean, I'm in the industry and even I have a team of people behind me that help.
We always say it's the team that really makes the deal come together.
Oh, totally. You just can't be everything to everyone. You can't be a specialist in everything. So having someone that just does exactly what you need them to do day in, day out with people like you, they're going to have invaluable advice that it's going to take you years to even get to the same type of advice that they would give you just from a phone call.
Yeah. They always say teamwork makes the dream work.
It's cliche, but it's totally true. I love cliches like that.
That's true. So you must have lots of different types of conversations with all different types of people. Are there reoccurring themes that come up in your conversations?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's always, as we said, there's a level of uncertainty with finances because it's generally, when we're speaking with them, it's either their growth journey, so they're buying their first home or they're buying the big family home or they're doing something with expanding their business. But we also deal with people in not so great situations, so divorces and other items like that, business breakdowns, kind of all the things that you don't want to happen. But there's lending required in all of those situations and it requires a plan. So mostly the consistent scenario that comes across all of them is just a level of uncertainty. Can I do this? Should I do this? Is now the right time? I can't tell you how many people ask if now's the right time to buy. I'm sure you get asked all the time. And it really depends on the client's individual situation as well as what they're buying and where they're buying and why they're buying it. So I would say, it'd most likely be, should we buy yet? Is probably the question I always get asked.
Everybody's journey is different, so they really need to run their own race.
100%. You can't, lots of people compare with their peers or even worse off when they compare with their parents because it's just such a different situation now than when our parents bought property or even our grandparents bought property. So it's ultimately a matter of determining what's right for you and if you're buying with a partner or a family, what's right for everyone and getting specific advice on it. I think that's invaluable.
Yeah, exactly. No question is a stupid question.
I actually say that word for word on my first call with all of my clients because you'd be surprised how many people try and Google things about finance and you get a different answer every single page you go on.
Yes.
And then they'll ask family, they'll ask friends, they'll ask colleagues, none of which have any type of financial acumen and it just leaves them more confused. So you'd always prefer them just to ask you versus going down the rabbit hole.
Exactly. So looking back at when you bought your first property,
yes,
what stands out from that experience?
I should really take my own advice first and foremost. I think I made every mistake that I possibly could. Really trusted the real estate agent, fell in love with every single property I walked in, tried to buy every single property I walked in, didn't get property reports, didn't get a pre-approval, like literally anything and everything that I tell my clients to do, I did the exact opposite. And then I also probably bought a little later than what I originally wanted to. Again, because I'd listened to the people around me and they were quite conservative and not property forward, as well as me just being, scared a little bit.
Yes, yeah. Well, you were very young.
Yes.
So what advice would you give to somebody following in your footsteps at such a young age buying their first property?
I think we're seeing it a lot more now. Lots of young investors, whether it's buying an investment property or a home to live in that will then be an investment property. I think it's really important to run your own race. You can ask people for advice, but ultimately if you have a gut feeling, you should probably go with it. And then instead of getting specific advice from people not in the respective industries, I would swap asking mum, dad, grandma, pop, barista down the corner. I would ask, a buyer's agent or my accountant. I just would swap out who I was seeking advice from.
So yeah, we come back to having the right team.
The right team really does make a difference because we see it a lot. Young people want to get into the finance market. They've done all the research and they're really keen. So from a lending perspective, perfect clients for us. They've done all the due diligence. We're just explaining how it works and giving them options. But then when they're buying the specific investment property, they've got no idea what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So while they've done all the research on the finance side, they haven't done the research on the property side. And that's super important because not every property performs the same, as I'm sure you see.
And prevention is better than cure?
Absolutely. You can't, it's very, very challenging to fix something that's been broken, especially from a finance perspective and even more importantly from a tax perspective. And investment properties just have so many different tax implications. And then there's opportunity cost as well.
Yes.
Because property's not cheap.
No.
Even cheap properties aren't cheap. You know, they have lots of other costs that pop up. And, you know, while you have money in one property, it might not grow. It might be costing you money. If you'd invested it in the right property, the opportunities are endless.
Yeah, great advice.
Thanks.
So from where you're sitting, what are you seeing happening in the property market at the moment? And I might add, we're at the end of April for the audience.
Yeah, look, I mean, property market's been very interesting. I think because we deal with clients nationally that we get a very high level view of a lot of different markets. I think what people don't understand about the property market is that there's macro markets and micro markets. It wasn't until I got into the industry and started working with you guys so closely that I really understood the technicality behind it. Because literally the difference in suburbs next to each other, I couldn't believe it. So I suppose what we're seeing is a lot of, on the younger side of things, a lot of rent vesting. So we're seeing a lot of people investing in Melbourne, funnily enough, lots in Queensland still, Adelaide, WA, and then regional New South Wales. I think the barrier to entry in Sydney is just the price. So we have a lot of seasoned investors that are doing quite well in Sydney with commercial properties and more blue chip suburbs. But it's been very interesting. I think lots of people, especially the types of clients we're working with, are taking advantage of the uncertainty in the market because everyone's kind of waiting to see what happens with rates and what happens with the election, and they're stalling on doing things. So the ones that are, you know, sure that they've gotten all the right advice from people and are ready to jump are really not necessarily getting bargains, but they're getting
They're
very
buying
good.
well.
They're
They're
buying
buying
well
well.
with less competition.
Yeah. So Melbourne's a hot topic at the moment.
Yes.
And I also personally feel that it's a good place to invest, provided you're in the right areas.
Right area. There's lots of house and land packages that we see, and you know, not to boo-boo on them, but you know, they're really pitched to people that don't know what they're doing really from an investment perspective. You're paying for growth for someone else that's already seen that. Whereas we have lots of clients that are buying, you know, dual income sites or potential subdivision sites in the future that are very, not necessarily underpriced, but the rental yield and the growth in there is insane. So it's just about getting the right advice on where to physically purchase.
Yeah, and also go on historical data. I think that's very important.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think is going to happen with interest rates? I know none of us have
Where's
a
my crystal
ball.
ball? Oh my God, the amount of times I get asked that as well. I mean, look, there's even the banks get it wrong and they have the most data of anyone. You know, CBA hasn't been accurate in their predictions for years. None of the major banks have. So, I mean, lots of them are predicting further rate cuts, which would be fabulous. But at the end of the day, when we're speaking about interest rates with our clients, you know, we're looking at mortgages and business loans potentially over 20 to 30 years. So what the rate is today isn't really what the rate's going to be forever. So when we're putting it into context, it's a matter of, well, does it make sense to acquire this particular property for the purpose that you're doing it at the cost that it's going to be? If it does, great. We'll obviously do our best to negotiate the most suitable rate for our clients. As low as possible is our favourite. But there are lots of other things outside of rate that impact loans, which I don't think people really think about, like fees and charges. I mean, we've got clients that are on some really sexy rates commercially, but then the bank's charging them a 2% line fee, which is just a thank you for having our service.
Yeah.
And it's super expensive.
It all adds up.
It definitely all adds up.
Jordan, you've worked with us at Brady Marks with multiple clients.
Yes.
And the experience has always been amazing. What do you think makes a strong relationship between a broker and a buyer's agent?
Picking up the phone, actually getting to know each other and getting involved in the process. You'd be surprised how many buyer's agents and brokers don't speak until the property's been acquired. And at that point, you've already missed out on some crucial points to be able to service your client in the most appropriate way. Because it might be an issue with getting a valuation, or it might be something on the finance side, or there might be something specifically that you guys find out about the property which could impact the finance. So we really want to make sure that you have spoken ahead of time and you get to know them really well, so that if something's looking serious and it's getting to the pointy end for you, that the finance is in the best possible position so that you can acquire that property, and so that the client doesn't feel any type of anxiety around acquiring it.
Yeah. That makes sense. So you work with CEOs, doctors,
Yes.
professionals, first home buyers and investors. And the list goes on because I know you have had a wide range of clients and still continue to work with all of these type of buyers.
Yeah.
What would you say would be the start for all of these buyers, irrespective of what their position is and their budgets are, that they can do to get prepared on their lending journey?
Yeah, I think there's never too early to speak to a broker. You know, lots of people go, well, I don't have X amount in the bank, then no one's going to speak to me. But realistically, if you haven't spoken to someone and you don't know what you're working towards, how can you actually put in place a meaningful plan to actually get to where you want to be? It's like a chicken and egg scenario. You can't buy if you haven't done the steps, but if you haven't spoken to someone, then you don't know what steps you have to take. Yeah. So we're really big on speaking to our clients or their children or friends and family that are looking at getting into the market as soon as they're thinking about it. So there are some of our clients that we've spoken with for 4 or 5 years before they've bought, because we're putting a plan in place. We've set savings goals, we've set income goals based on what they want to buy. You know, obviously the barrier to entry for lower value properties, and there's so many first home buyers grants available depending on which state you're in. You know, there's lower deposit requirements for that. But some people really want to jump to the expensive family forever home, and that requires a little more planning around savings in particular, deposit requirements. You know, do we have assistance from Bank of Mum and Dad potentially? I just think the biggest thing is have a chat with a specialist so that you can really assess where you're at and what you can do to get to where you want to be.
Is there a checklist?
Ooh, I think everyone's circumstances is different. Generally, there's a high-level checklist. You know, get a really good understanding of what your income is, what your expenses are, where you're wanting to buy, what you're wanting to buy, and then have a chat with someone, and then they'll be able to kind of put a plan in place for you specifically, because what suits you might not suit the next person, so you might be working to someone else's goal.
Yeah. So you're building a business.
Yes.
And you're raising a family.
Yes.
How do you navigate both? Because both can be very tough at times.
Oh, they're both demanding, and they're generally both demanding at the same time. It's never one and then the other. It's always everything at once. I really like having a lot on my plate. I feel like not necessarily that being under pressure is amazing, but I do like a level of high octane in my life. So having a 14-month-old and a business that's in a rapid growth journey has been really interesting. So I think it's been really important to focus solely on what I'm doing at any given time, because you just can't do everything at once. It's if I'm with the family, I'm with the family. Obviously, I will take calls and texts if I'm clients. Sorry, family. But ultimately, I'll try and be. If I'm with family, I'm with family. If I'm working, I'm working. It's a really clear delineation. I've moved all of my work stuff into my office. It's really just the phone I have on me.
Yeah. Balance is an important part of our life, but it's very hard to juggle.
It's super hard to juggle, especially when you say balance. I feel like most people think 50-50, and that's never a business owner's reality, unfortunately, unless you're very, very well established and you have a massive team of executives behind you. So it's just trying to find the balance with where you don't feel like you're taking from each cup, and you're not missing out on too much as well, because, you know, there's a lot for the business and you do prioritize that, but then, you know, you might miss baby's first steps or, you know, the little boo-boo at kindy. So, you know, it's all about really assessing, I think, what's important to you or to me, essentially, and then prioritizing that accordingly.
Yeah. So is there something about yourself that only, well, I shouldn't say is, what is something about yourself that only people close to you know about you?
I mean, I'm very transparent. I'm like an open book. I have no shame about most things. So, I mean, I think the most shocking thing that people find out about me is being a business owner, a mum to a very young Barb, is I don't drink coffee at all. Like, I'm just not a caffeine human. So it's very interesting in finance. You miss out on a lot, especially when you're coming up, because you're not going out with your executives or your bosses having a coffee and all that jazz. But outside of that, it's probably that I'm like a really big softie. Like, at work, I'm quite tough and I like to present that, you know, I'm a professional, I know what's going on. But it was super embarrassing. I was on a on a business flight recently and I was bawling my eyes out watching a movie. Anything with dogs, kids, old people, like I am a mess, like an absolute mess. It's awful.
So you're real and you're human, and that's what's important.
I like to think so. My partner makes fun of me for it. It makes it very interesting when we're trying to pick movies. Lots of action movies now. Very, very few soppy stories anymore.
Yeah. I also have a good cry when I'm watching a soppy movie.
Oh, you can't help it. You can't help it, especially anything. I've quite an interesting family background, so anything that's to do with like mother-daughter relationships or anything like that just gets me straight away, and I'm like, oh. But
Yes.
on a business flight is never really when you want to do it, especially when you're going into a full day of meetings with executives. It was an interesting look.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So what would you say your three takeaways would be for anybody at any stage in their property search or their finance journey that they should be looking into or doing to get themselves started?
Yeah, so I think first step is get a clear understanding of what you're wanting to achieve. Because you could speak to these specialists and they can give you clarity around different strategies. But if you don't know what you're after, we can't make decisions for you. I mean, sometimes it would be very nice to just be like, hey, Mr. Client, this is exactly what you should do. But ultimately, if we're recommending an investment, but they're really wanting to buy the family home, it's not going to match up with what they want. So getting a really clear understanding of what you're looking to achieve, where you want to go, even just a high level is probably the first step.
Yeah.
From there, second step would be surrounding yourself with a team of specialists. Like I can't stress enough how big of an advantage that is. Generally, we would say from a finance perspective, it's a really great accountant that works with people in your field, a really great broker or lender, again, who works with people in your field and understands where you want to go depending on where you're at in your career.
And a good buyer's agent.
And a good buyer's agent, of
Yeah.
course. I think the buyer's agent is more important on the property side of things, of course, because they're going to advise you on what makes sense.
Yes.
So from a finance perspective, it would be buyer's agent when we're at the point where we're actively ready to start looking at properties, considering properties, trying to get an idea of budget in the area, the accountant, the lender, as well as a financial planner, because they're really like that team of four. Honestly, you should be able to speak to them every so often. They should speak in the back end kind of without you, putting a bit of a strategy in place and then coming back to you as a solidified team, basically going, this is what you wanted to achieve. Here's some meaningful steps on how we can do it. These are the things that you probably should consider. These are the things we'd say to watch out for. And then they can at least make a very, very informed decision and not have to try and speak to 4 different specialists and try and find that time in their day between family and work. It can be a nightmare.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody's time poor.
Everyone's time poor. Everyone's super time poor. And then I think number 3, as we said earlier, is there is no stupid questions. It's if you aren't sure of what the answer is, ask. And if your specialist can't give you the answer, they will be able to point you in the direction of someone that can. I mean, I work with Alicia from your office all the time, and I defer to her on random stuff literally all the time because I'm like, you know what? I could try and find out the answer for you, but Alicia's going to know the answer and is going to be able to give you all the spots where you should look and will also be able to give you the tools to be able to do that yourself in the future. So I think knowing who to speak to initially and not being afraid to just ask.
Yeah. What's next for you and the team at Buy Invite?
Oh my God, we have so much in the pipeline. It's actually very, very exciting. So with all the rapid team growth, we've put in place a lot of different initiatives for the different specialties that we work with. Obviously, we deal a lot with medical professionals, so we have a whole division that we're going to be starting for that, as well as some conferences that I will be keynote speaking at in the next few months, which is very, very exciting. For our business owners and our regular investor clients, we're just going to continue being great. We're going to keep providing a super high level of service, trying to automate a lot of things in the background so that we can spend more meaningful time with our clients on the strategy and speaking with their accountants and planners, which I think is realistically where we're going to continue to add value to our clients, because AI is kind of replacing so much stuff nowadays, but I think it's going to actually enable us to have better and more meaningful relationships with our clients.
It's very exciting.
It's very exciting, but yeah, lots on the to-do list.
So if someone from the audience wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, so we have a website where you can leave an inquiry, or I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. So they're more than welcome to either go to our company page or go to my personal page, and they can send us a DM or they can send me a text or a call. I mean, we have very interesting avenues from all of our clients. You know, we get WhatsApps, no letters yet, thank God, emails, everything. You know, as long as it's going to get to us, we'll be able to action it in any way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been so lovely.
You're welcome.